and welcome to another episode of Toy Ventures. This week's is something personal, and I'm really glad I'm able to share it, and that is the PAC Toys line called Lords of Light. I was never aware of PAC Toys when they were originally out. In fact, it wasn't until my first internet dealing trading with a Micronauts collector that he made me aware of this wonderful brief line and this brief toy company. The story gets personal because I became kind of fascinated with it and eventually started doing, pieces about it online. And I actually started a friendship with Joe Ruzzi, who was the president of PAC Toys. Basically, what PAC Toys was a company that packaged and assembled things, the PAC. During the 1970s, Ruzzi had a brief encounter with two gentlemen at a lunch counter who were discussing packaging in Hong Kong and how they wish they could find a company that did it stateside. And of course, Ruzzi just turned around and said, my company can do that. And these guys worked for Remco, and it started an association with the toy business. So PAC Toys was packaging and creating finished product here in the United States, or there in the United States, for all the major companies. By the early 1980s, the company was booming, and Mego was going bankrupt around 1983. They owed PAC Toys $2 million, so Ruzzi created a deal where he would basically resurrect Mego. And the people in charge of Mego at the time pushed it through to the creditors, and it was almost a done deal. The company was called Phoenix PAC Toys, meaning a phoenix from the ashes. Further intermingling Mego, Joe worked with Marty Abrams on a kind of notorious toy line called Fabulous Felines, which was inspired by cats. That was their main dealing with each other. I don't think anyone really wants to talk about those toys. But Phoenix was really kind of going for some really interesting ideas in 1984. They had the Rocky license from Rocky 3. And they were also pushing Lords of Light. Lords of Light was a re-amalgamated, like a reimagination of the Micronauts brand, the tooling that Joe Ruzzi had access to. He didn't want to use the Micronauts name because he considered it clearance item, and by that time he was right. So on a fishing trip, he was doing work with American Similide, I believe that's how you pronounce it, on these glow sticks, and he got the bright idea of retooling the figures so that a glow stick could go inside the figure. And it actually works pretty well. The figures are mainly translucent, and you would snap a glow stick and put it down the character's neck, and they would glow. It was well done. I actually, when I first did my first trade for these, I probably paid $15 for them, so I took a couple off the card and did that. I regret that now, but it was the 90s and I didn't know any better. They had a terribly ambitious plan with TV commercials that are amazing, and I'll show a clip here.
PAC Toys presents Episode 7. Deep in space, a battle between good and evil has begun. Create your own adventures with the glowing action figures you control. Insert the Emerlite light rods and see them glow in darkness or in light. The Lords of Light collection. Tomorrow's toys today. Safe and non-toxic. Each sold separately. Only from PAC Toys.
The basic mythology for Lords of Light was the planet Izuri, which is Ruzzi spelled backwards, falls into darkness, and the good guys, led by Lord Luma and Prince Futura, were in a struggle for the resource Emerlite, which is the glow sticks, against Emperor Dementia and his Evilites. Guess what? They're the bad guys. It was actually all pointed out in a beautifully illustrated little comic book that each character had, and it's very ambitious and almost on par with everything else that came out during this time. So what went wrong with the Lords of Light were two things. One, PAC Toys was under federal investigation for their billing practices, something Joe, in my discussions with him, was very candid about. Basically, he got bad advice and ended up doing time for it. He regretted it, but again, he and others have told me that it was complete naivete on his part. The other thing that really probably didn't help was at the same time as the Lords of Light being developed, Martin and Howard Abrams rebranded the Micronauts as the Interchangeables and sold them to Toys R Us stores. The Interchangeables really didn't look much like the Lords of Light. They were basically repackaged Micronaut characters in new colors. While I personally don't see how the lines competed, because one has much more of a fantasy element to it, and the other is basically just the Micronauts again, Joe told me that buyers were confused and said, I already have the Micronauts, the Interchangeables, same thing. And he had some trouble getting to them to market. So the Lords of Light only got one wave out, all bad guys. Emperor Dimension, Topin, Nepos, these characters here. They didn't make any of the good guys to market. I've heard people say they had them as a kid, but they've never surfaced. I have one of the original prototypes, which I got off Joe, for a character called Liborio, who's kind of a robot, but he's got Repto's head and it looks like Antron's legs. He's supposed to wind up and walk, but he would just fall apart. He's a very fragile item. I'm really grateful I was able to get this from Joe, and he was excited too. Joe has since passed away, but he was very generous to toy collectors who were interested. In fact, the high-definition Mego Museum commercials we have on our YouTube channel are all courtesy of him. He generously donated them to us. So we have Joe Ruzzi to thank for those as well. All in all, it's just a fascinating little bit of a toy history. They had plans for more figures, obviously, even a life-size rideable version of the Micronaut Solarian, which is just awesome to think of. What might have been? The Lords of Light may have been one of those memorable toy lines like Sectars and Masters of the Universe, were it not for, some cruel twists of fate. Do you collect Lords of Light? Are you aware of them? Did you have them as a kid? I'd love to hear your feedback either on our Twitter at Plaid Stallions, through our Facebook page, Plaid Stallions, or just hit me up on these YouTube comments. As always, thank you for watching. I really appreciate it, and I love to hear your feedback. Until next week, have fun.